I think each one of our companies has a tremendous opportunity to go, hey, listen, we know we're not all things for all people, so let's embrace it. And maybe we even brand that, because that will attract pre-qualified people to us. We will set expectations before we have to utter our first word. And that is what optimizes customer satisfaction. It's not great experiences. It's accurately set expectations that are consistently met.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Rob Bellina with Differential Selling, and the core of the work that I do here is based on the idea that today's best enterprise sellers share some core qualities that are leading indicators of success. Today, we're having a conversation about one of those qualities. Today, we're talking about trust building, and my guest today is Todd Caponi. Todd is a former sales guy, former sales leader, former CRO. Now he teaches, advises, he writes. His first book, The Transparency Sale, is a fantastic read, and it's how I found out about Todd. And he's got the follow-up to that, The Transparent Sales Leader, that's coming out this spring. Todd, say hello.
Thanks for having me, my brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, really appreciate you doing this. So just to get us started, tell me about your background, because I really don't know much about what happened in your story before we met several years ago when you started doing your thing at Cloudera.
Well, yeah. How far back do you want me to go? Like first the cool and I fell into sales back in college. I went to Indiana University and got a job selling advertisements for the Indiana school newspaper, the Indiana Daily Student. And I found that I loved it, right? I had a blast doing that. And when I left college, getting jobs was easy because I was the only one that had actual experience. Now, to your point, I sold for a while. I consider myself kind of like a B+B sales rep, like not the A. I was pretty good at it, but I always knew that my passion was for leadership and teaching. Like that was something I always wanted to do, but nobody was going to give me a chance to do that. But I also had this little nerdy side of myself, which was around like the behavioral science of like decision making and like how we learn and all that. I finally got the opportunity to put those things together, and it really helped my career. And so, yeah, I'm a 7-time sales leader. Ran a couple of startups into the ground, like was trendy a number of years ago, but also been involved in 3 exits. I was on the sales leadership team of ExactTarget. We built that up, IPO'd, and then sold it to Salesforce for a little under $3 billion back in 2013. Went and became the CRO of a company called Power Reviews in Chicago. We actually built that into Chicago's fastest growing tech company from 2014 to 2017, according to Deloitte. And then got this crazy idea based on a research study that I felt like the world of selling was in need of an education about the power of transparency. So like a lunatic, I quit my job, wrote a book that I thought had a 50-50 chance that it would suck, but it's taken off, and I've turned it into an accidentally successful new career, which to your point is keynotes, speaking at sales kickoffs, and doing workshops and trainings for all kinds of companies all over the world.
I love how you called yourself very modestly a B salesperson. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's some of the transparency coming through. I remember when I first heard you speak, you gave the example, which I think is like enshrined in your book now, of the 4.5-star reviews versus the 5-star reviews.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. That was the thing that happened. So, by the company name Power Reviews, you can probably guess that we were in the reviews space, right? And so our company was focused on helping retailers and brands collect and display ratings and reviews on their websites. So if you've ever, you buy a pair of shoes on Crocs.com or a sweater on Vineyard Vines or Jet or whatever, the reviews that we all interact with, a lot of the time, we worked with about 1,000 retailers and brands. We were the engine that was helping with the collect and display of those reviews. So we ended up, our marketing team engaged with Northwestern University here in Chicago to do a research study on consumer behavior, meaning, all right, when a website's acting as a salesperson, what do people do? How do they interact? What triggers their decision making? And so they went on this study. We get the results back, and like that literally changed my life, which is the nerdiest thing of all time, that a research study about consumer behavior would change somebody's life. But there was 3 data points that came out of that, one of which was no surprise, but 2 of them like literally changed my life. The one that was no surprise was that 96% of us read reviews when we're buying something we haven't bought before that's of medium to high consideration, meaning like a pack of gum, you're not going to buy, or you're not going to look at reviews. But if it's something that means something, we all look at reviews. Again, no surprise, other than there was 4% of people at the time that didn't read reviews, which was weird to me. But the 2 data points that changed my life. Again, this is when a website's acting as a salesperson. Number 1 was that 85% of us go to the negative reviews first, right? So we skip the 5 stars and go right to the 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. Like, all right, that's interesting. But our brains, when a website's acting as a salesperson, we want to get at that negative first. But then that other data point was the one that you just referred to, that a product, and this is across all product categories, but a product with an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5 on a 5-star scale is optimal for purchase conversion. Meaning, if you really step back and look at it, a product with negative reviews right under it sells better than a product that has nothing but perfect 5-star reviews. And so you look at that, and I looked at that for like the nerdiest level of all time. I'm like, wait a second. Like, why? Why is that happening? And so me being the behavioral science nerd that I am, I started digging into, all right, why is this happening? And does it apply to human selling? And I quickly came to the realization that it absolutely did. That our brains, first of all, we're wired to know subconsciously that perfection doesn't exist. And number 2 is what triggers a buying decision is our ability to predict what our experience is going to be like, right? To our ability to have proper expectations set within our own mind that, hey, the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. And I know what the squeeze is.
Right.
As a salesperson, if all we're doing is talking about how delicious and nutritious the juice is, but never tell us the effort to get there or what the risk is or what might not like, our brains literally can't decide whether they want to do it or not. And so that's why, as it turns out, that transparency sells better than perfection. That leading with the flaws in your product, or something a competitor does better, or something you don't do, or a potential risk involved in your solution. When you lead with that, again, remember the 85% want that negative first. It builds trust. It speeds decision-making rapidly because we're able to trigger that expectation and prediction. And then more importantly, your win rate goes way up because you're not only working the deals you should be working, but you're going to lose the deals you're going to lose anyway, but a lot faster, so that you can take that precious inventory of yours, which is time, and apply it to the opportunities, either the ones that are active or finding new ones that are a better alignment to exactly what you do and you do best.
Well, and that's why your book is so compelling, right? Because it's when you say it like that, it's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's so opposite to how so many salespeople are trained, to how so many marketing teams work, to how so many, the things that go on the website, right? The customer success stories.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I had this realization a while ago that, some of the best B2C companies in the world, they embrace their flaws in such a great way that they are the market leaders. And I just think there's so many opportunities for B2B to think this way. Like, IKEA, for example. You walk into an IKEA and you know that you're in for it when they have to hand you a map, right? Like if you go into a retailer and they have to hand you a map, you know that this is going to be hell on earth. You go through the labyrinth of hallways to find what you're looking for. You finally do. There's no salesperson around, to help you. You've got to write down the code or take a picture of it with your phone, because you get to go into the warehouse yourself and find the boxes, pull the 100-pound boxes under cart that doesn't have brakes, which seems like a tremendous oversight to me. Like, put a brake on it. You then roll it into the parking lot. You jam it into the back of your car, Tetris style, like F-bombing. Like, if you thought your relationship with your spouse was good, go to an IKEA and try to jam the boxes into the back of your car together. You then drive home thinking that you just left that hell on earth back at the store, but it's only just begun because you open the box, there's 150 parts. There's no words on the work instructions other than like the brand name, like Svarta or whatever it is. And then you F-bomb your way through that. IKEA is the #1 furniture retailer in the world for 14 straight years. And it's because they embrace this idea of, hey, there's things we're going to give up, but we want to be great at our core, which is giving you modern Scandinavian design furniture that you didn't pay much for. Like Costco, same thing. You need a membership. There's limited brand selection, and the brands you do want, you want ranch dressing, here's a gallon. You want a toothbrush, here's a half dozen. And we're not going to bag your groceries, and there's going to be a woman at the door checking your receipt to make sure you didn't steal anything. Costco, the #2 retailer in the US, right? I think each one of our companies has a tremendous opportunity to go, hey, listen, we know we're not all things for all people, so let's embrace it. And maybe we even brand that, because that will attract pre-qualified people to us. We will set expectations before we have to utter our first word. And that is what optimizes customer satisfaction. It's not great experiences. It's accurately set expectations that are consistently met.
Mm-hmm. That, by the way, is a great segue into the concept of trust building. So the work that I do in my practice is based on the idea of these seller qualities, and I do a lot of work one-on-one with B2B sellers and with the teams that support them. And one of the qualities that I focus on is trust building, which is a catch-all for all the things that a good enterprise seller does to build trust. Transparency is certainly one of them. One of the things that I've found, and this particularly comes out when I'm talking to folks about, we're looking for candidates and we're doing our recruiting, is there's this sense of a lot of times the hiring company says, well, we want somebody with like that X factor. Like we want that like really compelling personality trait, right? Somebody, and you just meet somebody and you just trust them right away. And my recommendation is usually, hey, that's not a great leading indicator of success of a salesperson. Like it's not necessarily a bad thing, but finding someone that's got like that, charismatic quality, that can kind of be a red herring. And I do a lot of contrasting of that. That's one thing over here. What we're talking about is something different. It's actually the doing of the processes that are going to build actual trust, something that a customer can actually rely on. So, as I'm kind of talking through that, I see the ways that you talk about being transparent with a customer and how it prepares them for an accurate experience with you, and it pre-qualifies people. What are some other ways that you've seen that like the sales world needs some help sort of contrasting that slick personality trait versus how we actually build trust as humans?
Well, yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so much to unpack there. I think at its core, the one sentence that I say over and over in the book is, with every interaction, you are either building trust or eroding trust. It's never staying the same, right? And when you're eroding trust, it erodes at a much rapid level, a much faster level than building trust does, right? So if you start in the hole, digging your way out of that hole sucks, right? It may never happen. I think that one of my clients is in the antivirus software space, right? So their technology helps companies that have a bunch of remote employees that have laptops at home that are accessing the network. It's endpoint security, right? So, making sure that they're not doing terrible things that could harm the whole company. You know how many companies are in that space? According to an analyst, there's 56 companies that do the exact same thing. And so, one of the things that I worked with them on, and they really embraced, and they're killing it as a result, is you can try to differentiate on your features and functions, your price, maybe your implementation or your service offerings. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for companies to differentiate in the way that they sell. Right? And this whole idea of embracing and leading with trust and building it up from the first conversation and that happens with us as a company, us as salespeople, and the individuals that you're bringing on. is finding those individuals that are willing to embrace trust and are looking for the best fits, not just looking to hit their numbers. I just think that there's a whole karma involved. You and I were talking before we hit record about a conversation that I had yesterday with a leader of a big software company, where what he was looking for was not what I do. And this is a big company with a big opportunity. But as soon as he said, this is what I want, and my response was, cool, I've got 3 or 4 people I can refer you to. Your sales enablement person, I'll hook him up with them and you can vet them, because that's not what I do. Here's what I do.
Yeah.
And that immediately built trust to the point where, confidence becomes contagious. And we ended up talking through what I actually do to the point where it's probably going to turn into a pretty nice engagement. Right. And so I think that the traditional means of organizations that do a couple of things wrong. Number one is, even in my early days I was selling for a big technology company in the late 90s. We used to teach our reps and our solution consultants that the answer is always yes. Right? Like the company says, hey, do you do this? Your response should always be yes. Partially because there was no way to find out that the answer is no, and partially because the technology was so complex that they would never realize that we don't actually do that. The world has changed. This idea of transparency selling better than perfection, we have known since the beginning of time. I've got a whole collection of books from the late 1800s, early 1900s that talked about how honesty and transparency sells better than perfection. We are now, though, in a changed era where the proliferation of reviews and feedback and everything we do, buy, and experience means you can't hide your flaws and expect to get away with it anyway. And so now we need to embrace this. Like, if you haven't figured out how to do it yet, 10 years ago, you might still have been able to get away with it. You can't get away with it anymore.
Yeah.
And so, like, to kind of tie that back to, like, there's a whole nother rant that I can go on about what you had said about the candidates that you look for and the recruits. I'll take a breath there though and get your feedback on that first piece.
No, I do want to hear about that, by the way. But when you were sharing that, and I remember one of my very first managers coached me and said, hey, it is a great way to build trust with someone that costs you nothing, is be responsive. Like, when they call you, pick up the phone. When they email you, turn around and email right back, unless it's something that you can't do that. And if you can't do that, email them right back and say, hey, got your email, I'm working on this. And I was like, I don't know about that, right? But like, literally, that has served me well my entire career. And I've actually had customers that have said, and I think the word I'd use is more like dependability or predictability, right?
Yes.
That the customer will say, hey, I don't always like the answer, Rob, but I know that if I email you, I'm going to get a response in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there are little things like that can build trust that's way more effective and provides way more of a benefit than having the slick right answer at the right time or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, people establish an opinion of you and they expect that expectation to be consistently met. Like, the thing that used to drive me nuts in my companies is our sales reps are so focused on closing the sale that after the customer signed, that the rep would never even thank them or talk to them again. Like, the customer, you get that dopamine hit when you hit, submit order on a website or something, and you expect to get an email right away going, hey, it's confirmed, this is when we're going to send it. You're like, yeah. But then we're making $100,000 software contracts or whatever, customer signs, and we're just like, cool, high five the people in the office, and they don't hear from anybody. Like, that's the kind of responsiveness that you've got to have. Now, I'll tell you though, I'm going to go on a different rant than I was planning on about setting expectations. The one thing that I warn everybody who's listening, there is this old school of thought. Because remember, so far we've talked about setting proper expectations and consistently meeting them. There is this school of thought that, and there might be some of you listening that are like, yeah, always under promise and over deliver, right? Like, you hear people say that all the time. No, that's actually a bad idea. And here's why. Over promise and under deliver, of course, terrible idea, right? And we tend to do that as salespeople all the time. We got to figure out how to stop that. Overpromise, underdeliver. And by the way, part of my rant about the recruiting was going to be how sales leaders consistently overpromise and underdeliver when they're recruiting, right? They're recruiting saying, oh, it's going to be great. Our top performer made $1 million. We're going to give you 20,000 stock grants, right? And like all this stuff. And you want to get into leadership, you come in here and we're going to give you a path, maybe 6-8 months. We're going to grow so fast. We'll be looking for leaders like you. Like there's all that crap that's overpromise, underdeliver, drives disengagement. And you wonder why the average rep tenure is under 18 months.
Yeah.
But I digress. Underpromise, overdeliver, it's actually a form of lying. And it creates something that I call expectation inflation. That if you are consistently underpromising and over-delivering, the person that you're working with will start to inflate their expectations based on what you communicate to them.
Mm.
I'll give you a quick example. And this is a cheesy example, but I think maybe you'll see where I'm going with this. My family and I, we went to a restaurant just outside of Chicago in Barrington, and great restaurant, loved it. The kids loved it. Food was good, but typical, right? You sit down, they give you a menu, they take your drink order, take your food order, they give you the food, you eat it, they say anything else, they clear the table, they give you the check, right? Normal. But this place, when they give you the check, they also brought freshly baked cookies and milk for the kids, right? So that's essentially an under promise, over deliver, right? Because you weren't expecting, you would have been perfectly happy and probably would have come back again if you just got the check, but they overdid it, right? Kids through the moon, like, wow, this is the greatest cookie I ever had. Like they're going crazy about it, right? Yeah. So now short-term satisfaction spike from under promise, over deliver. We come back again a few weeks later, same thing, fantastic, right? But the kids are not as excited as they were the first time because they now expect this.
Right.
Third time we come back, cookie it's good, but it was made a couple hours ago. It's like, it's not fresh. And the kids are just like, it's kind of cold and kind of hard, right? Our expectation is always the bill. But because they set this new bar, our expectation has been inflated to the point where now they're actually walking out of the restaurant disappointed. And that's what we do as salespeople when we consistently underpromise and overdeliver, whether it's features, functions, service levels for customers, or whether it's the commits that we give to our managers, where we go, yeah, I'm not going to tell my manager that I'm going to do 400 this year. Or this quarter, I'm going to go with 300, just so there's less eyeballs and less pressure. And then you consistently do the 400. What's that manager going to do? You say 300, they're going to write down 400, and they're going to be mad at you when you do 350. It's a fact of life. So we've got to be careful. Our goal as salespeople, as marketing organizations, the way to help a customer best predict to where they buy, they stay, they buy more, and are more likely to advocate is when we set proper, accurate expectations and meet them consistently.
That way we're not left disappointed with a cookie that we didn't order and didn't
exactly right. It's like
we got for free.
It's just funny. Like this morning, I texted you because internet was down all across the country with Xfinity Comcast.
Yeah,
it's funny to think about. Like you just feel helpless, but 20 years ago we didn't have any of this, right? Like it's a new expectation that we've got because we keep getting to that point that now we're angry, right?
Right.
But the same thing that we do almost subconsciously, where we try to under promise and over deliver. It's not a sustainable strategy. And I just encourage all of you, focus on setting correct expectations, because that's when you win. One quick last example there. Me and my family, we went to Door County in Northeast Wisconsin a few weekends ago. And, the under promise, over deliver doesn't always work in your favor. The promises are what we build our expectations on, and we surround ourselves with the resources based on. We were going to go to Door County. We looked at the weather, like 5-day forecast, and it said that on Saturday it was going to be in the 50s. It was actually going to be in the 50s and sunny, overcast the whole weekend. So we packed accordingly. Jeans, sweaters, like all the overcoats, all of that. Saturday, when we got there, it was 78 and sunny. You might think, wow, 78 and sunny, that's awesome. What a beautiful day you had. We were freaking sweating bullets. Like we were trying to find a place where we could buy t-shirts. It was annoying to us, right? And so like, I just want everybody to just think, be careful with your under promise, over deliver too. It's almost as bad as the over promise, under deliver.
You know, you alluded to how that can play out internally of like giving your forecast, right? And every sales guy has been accused of sandbagging at some point.
Yes.
And when I think particularly, B2B sales, particularly at the enterprise level, I mean, that selling at that level, that's a team sport. And, there are a lot of times where I've had the experience of, it's not just a forecast that I'm giving to my management and leadership for the forecast that they're making to the board or to public markets, but I'm also having to work with our support team on, hey, this deal is going to be implemented a little bit differently. Watch out for this. Or the professional services team. Hey, I think the deal is going to close in April, so we need to be ready for a rollout, right? Tell me about trust building internally in an organization to kind of, more than just the forecast to your leadership.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it always starts with leadership and the culture that we're building. I think that historically, and this is something that I'm writing a lot about, my chapter on forecasting is this is the manuscript. It's like 51,000 words for the transparent sales leader. The longest chapter is on forecasting, because I just think that there's so much that we've done wrong as sales leaders. And sales leadership at its core has been the telephone game, right? Where you get promoted into leadership, you're probably not going to get much training on it, because the assumption is, hey, you've been led before, just do that. We think you're good. Go be a leader, take the best stuff from other people. And we need to focus our enablement resources on these 100 sales reps we just hired, right? And that's totally understandable, but it causes the telephone game of things like forecasting. And at its core, the cultural elements of the environments that we create that actually drive forecasting to be atrocious in most organizations. I'll start with forecasting culture in terms of one of the things that I kind of accidentally did right, partially because I just liked the environment, was celebrating losses. And what I mean by that is when a rep loses a deal, in many organizations that I've worked in the past, that the rep tells their boss and then walks back to their desk like Charlie Brown checking the mailbox on Valentine's Day and not finding any Valentines in there, right? And everybody's, oh, poor you. And the manager probably just said, you got outsold, right? Like that's got to stop, because here, the rep is already getting punished in their pocket and their quota attainment. So we would literally celebrate the losses for not only the effort that they put into it, but for whatever lessons we can learn and share across the organization to help us so that we don't lose that way again.
Yeah.
Right. And so, during our Friday meetings, we would pick a rep that lost the deal. And we'd like, hey, tell us about this deal. And like, everybody would clap, like, nice work, awesome. What can we learn from it? And if it's, they suck and they're idiots, well, no, that's not the kind of lesson we want to celebrate. How do we learn to recognize that earlier? What are the things that we can take out of it that maybe we can apply to other deals? There was one big deal that we had pursued for like 4 or 5 months that we did a champagne toast on a Friday after we lost it, because I knew that rep was fantastic. And I didn't want him feeling like, we think he sucks and he thinks he sucks. I wanted to boost him up and like, hey, you put 4 months of your life into this thing, dude. Like, let's celebrate that and let's dissect it. And so I think it starts there, because when the opposite is true, 2 things happen. Number one, your reps are afraid to tell you when they've lost. So they keep working deals and try to revive them. When you're going to lose fast. So like that's a number one. But number 2 is a lot of leaders that go with the commit philosophy. Like, what's your commit? What's your commit? I think commit is the dirtiest word a sales leader could ever utter out of their mouth. Like, I think commit is a filthy word. But guess what that causes? When that rep starts to lose control or lose a good feeling about that deal they committed, who do you want them to be the first person they go to when that deal is in trouble? Their manager.
Right.
In a commit environment, Guess who they go to last? Their manager, because they know their manager is going to, you committed that deal. We've got to create cultures where, winning and losing is equally embraced. And that's how we create these environments where reps can coach, people can learn. It's not always the customer's fault when you lose, and your forecast becomes infinitely more accurate, literally overnight when you think that way.
Yeah, yeah. That point about commit. I had a manager one time where, it was like we had to put 3 different numbers on the board, and like there's like stars align, what we think is going to happen, and then the in blood number that we're going to deliver no matter what. And I was like, why isn't it just one number, right? And then the other thing that I found too is when you've got that, like, this is the thin red line number that we're going to deliver no matter what, a deal that's much larger than that number starts going sideways. The natural inclination is, okay, let me discount you down to my commit number to try to salvage this deal.
That's the point. Or let me stop working on you and I'll work on some crappy other deals just to get over my line.
Right. And then you got this like totally under revenued deal that's just like, why did we take this deal? Or yeah, you're working on deals that are, it's like the bits.
Think about just the psychology of being in that room. Let's say your pipeline sucks. You're at least going to give a number that's like that, especially if you're having to do this in public, around your cohorts. Yeah. You're going to overinflate your number and deal with the ramifications later. The rep that's going to crush it this quarter isn't going to be up there go, I'm going to do 2 million, right? They don't want that pressure, and they don't want to be looked at as some arrogant jackass. So they underdo it. Like literally everybody in that room, when you're creating those commit environments, subconsciously is driven to lie. Like you literally are creating a room full of, you've turned your conference room into a house of lies by just uttering the word commit. And I just think that's insane. Like we've got to stop that. It erodes trust within your teams too, where you don't feel like you can go to each other when things are struggling. Like as a leader, you want people to run behind you and get your advice and get your coaching. And instead you create an environment where you're afraid of that individual because you've got this thin lead rat or whatever the hell that, like, that's insane. We got to stop that.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I'm watching our time. Let me get a little bit more practical with you. If there's somebody watching, a lot of the folks I work with are new to the field, right? They've been in a development role or a customer success role. Now they're moving into the field. What are some indications that you're struggling with trust with a customer, or what are some indications that you're doing it well?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, first of all, there was a study that was done by the corporate executive board back in 2017. They're now Gartner, but it looked at, all right, in a consensus purchase, right, where there's multiple buyers, where are those buyers spending their time during an evaluation of you and your technology and your competitors? Well, as it turns out, only 39% of their time is spent talking to you, talking to your competitors, or talking to their internal buying team. Right? You think that's most of it. Well, that's 39%. 61% is spent doing other stuff. And that other stuff is back channeling you, checking references, checking with analysts, going to the, if it's the technology sale, maybe it's the G2s and the trust radiuses of the world. They're, talking to peers and friends and all that kind of stuff. And so the purpose of the study was, hey, just know that 61, I think that's wrong. I think that 61% is not a foregone conclusion. I think that we as salespeople are driving our buyers to have to do the 61% because we are presenting our solutions as being perfect, and they've got to go find out how we're not. They don't trust you. And so when you feel like your sales cycles are lengthening, when you see that you're losing to the status quo more often, or you're finding that customers are going, you know what, we're going to prioritize something else. That's usually an indication that they haven't been able to make an accurate prediction in their own mind of what their experience is going to be like with you. Like that's, again, your brain triggers a decision either for you or against you based on their ability to predict. And if their brain never gets comfortable with the prediction, it never buys. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. And number two is as you see sales cycles lengthen, it's probably, again, telling you that maybe you're not embracing transparency and trust. I just picture a time where you bought from somebody that you fully trusted, right? Did you have to go back channel them The person that's redoing my website is a guy that I know. It's a guy that has done it for a bunch of people like me. And my first conversation with him was the last conversation I had about vendor selection, right? Because I trusted him. I trusted what he was saying. He embraced what he does, what he doesn't do. And I was just like, let's go. How much? Right? Here, I'll Venmo you the money. And that's literally how it worked. And so like, you'll feel it. If your customer is having a hard time predicting, sales cycles will lengthen. You'll see that you're losing to the status quo more often. And you'll see that the claims made by your competitors are holding more weight in your buyer's mind. When you embrace transparency, it does all the things that we said before, right? Speeds decision making, improves win rates, qualifies in faster, qualifies out faster, but it also makes it really hard for your competitors to compete against you. And if you haven't built trust properly, you'll find that the competitors' claims are actually holding more weight and you're spending more time defending than you are helping them predict.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, just to wrap us up, if somebody's watching, they're new to a role or something and, just starting on this trust building journey.
Yeah.
Job one is read the transparency sale. What else would you recommend? What are some other resources, things you'd point us to, common pitfalls?
Well, I'll tell you, if you're new to the role, there was a time where I was spending a lot of time working with early stage tech entrepreneurs, most of which were the engineer type, right? Where they've got the product, they know how to build it, they build their viable product. And all of a sudden now they're new to sales because they're like, all right, now I have to take this to market. I have to go sell. And most of them feel like, oh, do I have to go get a plaid jacket and some gold chains, right? And be Johnny salesperson? No. For anybody who's new to the sales world, a couple of things, be you, first of all. Like nobody sells better than, don't try to be somebody else. Embrace the things that about you that are you. But number two is a quote from, again, Sales History, 1919, an author named Arthur Dunn. His quote is, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. If you embrace that idea, you will always be successful as a sales professional because your job is to help set expectation, help the customer predict. And if you embrace the truth always, you might lose the deal that's in front of you right now, but for good reason. And I'm telling you, that will come back to you again. Empty pipeline is no reason to lie to customers or bend the truth. An empty pipeline will fill either short-term or long-term by embracing the truth. And again, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it.
Well, with that, we will bring it to a close. Todd, thank you so much. This was fantastic. You shared so much wisdom with us. Really, really appreciate it.
Dude, I could have gone another hour too.
I know you could have. I appreciate you giving me the time that you did. And best of luck with the release of the Transparent Sales Leader. I'm really excited for it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.